All right. Well, I've been waiting for this interview since I read this fantastic book called Smokey Bear, The Cub Who Left His Pawprints on History, a novel by Karen Signell. Well, I have to tell you, Karen, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
But let me tell you that there isn't anyone that I don't talk about this book and put it in front of them who just starts, you know how someone goes through a book, they just get started, and then you can see them go page after page. In fact, I almost lost it because I'm sharing this with my friends, and then I said, where is the book? I need to have it for Saturday morning.
Yeah.
You know, Karen, you have done something that is unique. It is unique to be able to not only have something that's historical, as you have with the bear, but then to add all the little animals in it, which really, they don't exist. They exist, but they don't really say the things that you tell in your book that they say. Which, I mean, I think is just so wonderful. Now, I know I'm probably confusing people, but what I wanted to do is just let's talk a little bit about you first. Okay. And then after we talk about you, we'll talk a little bit about what this book is and how it even came to be. So here you're in South Florida.
Yes, I live here.
But you haven't always lived here, obviously.
No.
Okay, so tell me about that. Where did you come from?
Well, I was born in born in Rockford, Illinois, where my mother and father came from. And then I spent some time in Wisconsin, and then around Washington, D.C., in the woods near there. We built our own house there in the woods, out of logs from the woods.
You've always been a naturalist, it's obvious.
Oh, yes, and there were wild animals around. I always liked to creep up on the animals. I'd creep up on a rabbit, let's say, and I knew how to just gauge it so that I would go slowly and be watching the rabbit until I got so close that I could see the nose twitch.
Amazing. You know, and I'm not going to pursue that yet. I want to go back to that. Okay. Was this something that, as a little kid, when you were, very, very young, that it was just something that you had to have? It was a passion about little animals?
Yes. Like my mother. We'd rescue a bird and that had bashed into the window of the house, and we'd run out and hold it in our hands and cup it in our hands, and I would be feeding it worms. But I think my mother was very compassionate about animals, and I was too. I just loved them, watching them and their ways.
Well, there are people like you out there. There are botanists or there are animal. There are all sorts of people who live for an animal. Whether they become the veterinarian or whatever else it is. But you were a professional in another field.
Yes.
So you left that in a way.
Yeah, but a field that also called on empathy and compassion too. I worked with patients who came to me as a therapist, and it was very rewarding. I mean, I think it called upon the same thing, so I could feel what they're feeling, and help them with their life.
Yeah, as a clinical psychologist.
Yes,
but then, and a lot of people don't know about Carl Jung, but as a Jungian analyst, you actually even moved further into some very deep psychology.
Yes, and with Jungian analysis, sometimes you spend some time with people's dreams. If they come in with a dream wondering, what did that mean? So we'd work it out between us, what their thoughts were and what my thoughts were too. And I found that these dreams, can I tell about the book I wrote?
I want you to, please,
okay.
Yes, because I did I was getting into that.
Oh.
I started looking at that. I just didn't have enough time, but I will read that one also.
Yeah, well, this was when I was learning about Jungian psychology. It seemed that women were being neglected some, and maybe even, of course, this was a feminist era too, where women were being defined by men. We started to realize instead of their own
the power that we
psychology.
had within us.
And also the compassion within.
Yes.
There's a lot of thoughts during the 70s that women should should have equal rights and should have some power, which was fine. But it was neglecting another side, it seemed to me. And I'm not talking about just being compliant or fitting some kind of stereotype, but what were some of the deeper...
I would call it essence. The essence in a woman.
And so when I thought, well, I'm just going to go straight from the raw material, being a scientist, I thought I should do that. And so I started collecting the dreams that women had and writing them down. Women that had shown something about women's essence, yes, and some of the deeper knowledge that we have, the intuitions. They come from the unconscious, because dreams come from the unconscious, right? What we don't know.
It's interesting that you should say that, because haven't we all said, "What's my intuition? I just know." How do you know? Well, I just know, right?
Yes,
and that's
right,
what you're saying.
Right.
You know, I don't want to lead anyone astray here, because I actually brought Karen in to talk about her book, but she is the most interesting person. After reading her books, I don't even know where to go with this, but I'm going to force myself to go back to Smokey Bear, because I want people to buy this. It's still the holiday.
All right.
And I think it's the nicest gift. In fact, I don't know why you're selling it so inexpensively.
I wanted it to reach people, so I cut down the royalties,
Well, I have to tell you, that picture is the most precious picture of Smokey Bear. But why don't you kind of just make believe that I'm not here, in a sense, and then talk to us about who you are when it comes to this bear, and what you did over the years, and a little bit about the bear. It's such a wonderful story.
Let me give just a slight footnote. That
Please.
I took those dreams and I made a book out of them.
Oh, yes,
So
I know you did.
People
And
who can afford analysis or therapists, they can then go to my book. It's called Wisdom of the Heart.
Yes, I see. It's Wisdom of the Heart.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have that Wisdom of the Heart. It's a fantastic book.
Thank you.
Maybe what we'll do is have you back again and discuss that book.
Okay, fine.
How about let's do that, because I think it's a good subject.
Yes.
We'll have you back.
All right.
Okay, put that on the side. Okay.
But let's get to Smokey, because
Let's
Smokey,
go
my heart goes to Smokey.
I know it does.
Well, what happened was that when I was living in the woods there, my father came home and he said, "You should see the headlines. Smokey Bear arrives in Washington, D.C." And I thought, he said, "Toots, you got to go see this bear. I know you want to." And I said, "Absolutely." So I hitched a ride into Washington, and I saw this little bear, really tiny, up a tree in his cage, in his enclosure. And I looked at his sad eyes, and I thought, this little bear, what was it like for him? What's it like for him being in a cage? What did he go through with those burned paws? His paws had been burned high up in the mountains when there's a terrible forest fire. And they rescued him. They thought he'd die. And anyway, so I thought I should write a book about this little bear. I'd already published a bit. I was 15 years old. And so I went to the Forest Service. I was a shy kid then, and I felt self-conscious, but I marched in, and I said, "Could I have some photographs of this bear? Can I write a book about him?" And they were very nice, these Forest Service people. They said, "Well, yes." And they gave me some wonderful photographs, just great photographs. Well, I didn't get my little story published at that time, and in a way I'm glad, because I let it sit. That was 1950. I let it sit until the year 2000 when I retired.
But did you visit the bear all along?
No. I saw him that one time that I had to go back to school, and I was at school out of state.
But he was there for 26 years.
Yes, he was.
And
You're
you
right.
never went and saw him again. But all this was from memory.
Yeah. And, I did a lot of research. Meanwhile, by the year 2000, a man named Lauter had written a wonderful historical biography. It's all facts. He interviewed hundreds of people who'd actually seen the bear and knew him back when. And so I had all this scaffolding and decided I'd make a novel out of it. and not just looking at the bear and at him, but what's it like to be a bear?
Only you.
So I tried to write from his viewpoint, which is a little bit difficult because bears, I learned from naturalists who've known bears since they were little, that they smell other world. And I thought, what are the words for smelling? That we don't have many that are our words from the perfume industry or whatever. And so I had to try to figure out, and that's why I have words in there, because I have the bear talking with a crow, and I have the bear, and in a way what I'm doing, the animals do communicate with each other. We know that. But they don't do it in our language, which is words. So I thought, well, I'll translate what they're doing and thinking and letting each other know through translated into human words.
But they were very kind words. I mean, that's what I love. But don't worry, your mommy, mommy's going to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a little family. It was so special.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you really appreciate it.
Oh, I really did. I mean, I told you before, when I get a book to review, usually I take an hour or two. I have to go through it pretty fast.
Yeah.
I made the mistake, and 8 hours later, I was through this, and now I just have been referring to it, and I at first said, oh, is it a children's story? And that's, and you said, well, children will enjoy it, but it's not a children's story. I mean, yes, we can read it. It's really a human story.
Oh,
it's a human story, and I know this bear so well after your book.
His personality. At first, I thought he would just. Back when I was 15, I wrote this little story. How he's a sweet little bear, but really, it turned out the facts are always more interesting than fiction, in a sense. That I found out he really was a feisty little bear who would bite the man who saved him a lot, even though I think he really cared about him. And they do get reconciled later in life when Ray, the wonderful cowboy game warden who rescued him against the rules and had to bandage him, which hurt a lot, to pare off bandages, and he probably thought it was torture. But the little bear and he were reconciled finally years later at the zoo. So that's nice.
Well, the thing that really, was so, you just thought you were sitting there when this happened is, here's this very badly burned bear, and they didn't know it was going to live. Yeah. And I mean, and then they put the little bandages on, and the bear, would sleep for days and days because it was close to death.
Oh yeah, they didn't think he would survive really.
And that's true, right? All that was true.
Oh yes, and I tell in the book at the end what's fact and what's fiction, which characters are real people, and which animals are real in his life, and because when I read historical biographies, I often want to know. What really happened? What's just the imagination?
Well, at the and I'm just going to say at the end, and it's not really, for me, it's not a beginning and end. It's the whole book. But I just want to go to the end because it's beautiful that his body was taken,
yes.
and is now part of a memorial.
Yes, in Capitan, New Mexico,
that's
where he was
fantastic.
born. Yeah, and people visit there from all over the world, in fact. And the Capitan people built a little log museum for him, just as volunteers. And they've been very keen on this little bear, because he was rescued by their own people. And their people, their young people, their ranchers, they all fought in that fire.
Well, what about a bear's personality? I mean, you seem to know various animals. Is a bear a mean kind of an animal?
Oh, no. People have this image that bears will attack you. Now, black bear, he's a black bear. Black bears are smaller than the big brown bears and grizzlies we think about. And you'll see a lot of pictures in the book. The book has 60 pictures of this little bear.
Wonderful pictures.
Anyway, where was I? Let's see. Oh, bears, yes. And I think actually bear attacks by black bears are terribly rare, hardly ever. And they're among us. They're in every 50 state, going after the bird feeders and things that people put out. And some of them are having trouble getting food because of droughts and so on. So they do come into town or on the outskirts of town. So people see them and are worried. But bears just glide by in the woods. They see us much more than we see them.
So has there ever been a famous bear since our little friend Smokey?
Well, in Japan, there's a polar bear that was very famous in recent times. And in Germany, he made the headlines, this bear that people visited in the zoo. So I'm kind of hoping there may be translations. My earlier book, Wisdom of the Heart, about dreams, was translated into many languages. And I have this big hope that maybe, especially in Germany and Japan, maybe.
I would hope so. If the book is large. I would just tell you right now, it's worth every cent. It's about 500 pages, and so why don't you give information for people who would like to buy this now? You could probably get it in time for the holiday, or even if it came a few days later, wouldn't matter. What should they do?
Well, you can go to Amazon and just look up Smokey Bear and my name, Signell, or just Smokey Bear. If you say Smokey the Bear, that was the song. But Smokey Bear, you'll find it right away. And they ship it if you have Prime. It can get to somebody in 2 days.
Okay, but there was something else too, another name.
Barnes and Noble, but that you'd have to order it specially with them. And ebooks. Those of you who have an ebook, almost any kind of ebook has Smokey Bear. And if you order it, it's only $3.99. I made it very low priced. And if you have a recent ebook, all the photographs are in color, which is fun. Oh, right, because they're in black and white. But, this is the cutest thing I wanted. Smokey uneasy in Homer's lap. Yes. I mean, that's like a stuffed bear. It's hard to believe that's really a live bear. Yeah. He was in the household, and Ray, the one who rescued him, in his household where he stayed for a couple of months before going to Washington. He would sit with the mother in the family, and with a bottle of kind of a certain kind of milk, and the little girl, 4-year-old, he'd sit in her lap too, and drink his milk. And he was very sweet with them, but not with the men who bandaged him and everything. Yeah, but he played with the little Jet, the Cocker Spaniel in the family. When I visited the son who was there, I saw a video, kind of crummy video, but I could see it anyway of him playing the bear and the Cocker Spaniel playing. Yeah, you've certainly lived this. I mean, talk about dreams. You wonder, after you wrote this, did you dream about Smokey, or have you been dreaming about Smokey at any point in your life? Not really. Not really. Oh, let me mention one other thing. Okay. That if people go to my website, which I just made, www.smokeybearanovel.com. Okay. They can see more pictures of him. They can read about some things about him. Oh, good. And see scenes that are not in the book, even. Because this is a book for adults, Yes. I wrote it for adults, but with a thought that younger people could like it. Oh, they would like it. Yeah. They would. If I had my grandchildren, they're 9. If I had them for a whole weekend, trust me, I'd be reading the book. But I don't get them for a whole weekend. I get them a little spacey time and all. But it definitely would, because, I just was going to pick up. Is there a particular passage or something here that you just absolutely loved? I have so many I could read, but if this is your book, and the way you talk to these people were talking, these animals were talking to Smokey, it's not possible. Just love it. Well, when I was first starting to write about Smokey, he was such a tiny bear living in a cave high up on a mountain, and I was sitting there, I didn't dream about Smokey, but when I was sitting there writing, I thought, there's only so much you can say about a helpless little bear. And I thought, something needs to come in. And in flew a crow in my imagination, and named Strut, who's a big character in the book.
Oh, yes.
He could warn the bear about humans and things like that, or also entice them to go look at things that were a bit dangerous that Mother Bear would not like. And so he's the real character. And when I sat down to write this book over the 14 years, I would sit down, and some people say they have a block for writing, but I would always be thinking, what happens next? I was kind of eager to see what would happen next, and it would just fly in, so to speak. So that was fun.
Yeah, you really were into this. It's obvious that you spent. So when someone would ask an author, how long did it take you to write? You say 14 years. Well, that's not really true. It's just kind of because you did it spasmodically. You did it in a few here and a little bit there, right?
No, it was full time.
Was it? That was after you retired?
Full time. Yes, I retired in 2000.
And you did nothing else but put all this together, because there was a lot of research. That was the big thing, right?
I had to read about 100 books from naturalists who study animals and know them intimately. They know the sounds they make for certain feelings and so on. So I could incorporate that. So it's vivid, and it's really from the animal's viewpoint, whether it's a crow or a bear or some monkeys. I had a monkey when I lived in Indonesia for a year, and so I remember Ahmad. I mean, he was quite a character. So that comes into the book too.
I have this other, and I want to stay on Smokey Bear, but you gave me another book, and you said, "Oh, don't you see these Egyptian geese?" And I said, "I don't. We have these ducks on this big lake, but I don't think I've seen them." Anyway, Welcome to Florida, Ancient Egyptian Geese by Annie Mack and Karen Signell. Well, let me just tell you, you did the same thing with this. I mean, I didn't expect you to read this. I just oh yeah, well, when I see her, I better tell her about I don't remember seeing these ducks, but my goodness, this whole thing with Cleopatra, this whole thing in Egypt, and you did it again. You really do have a knack for taking some, I didn't like the very end where the geese, the thing was dead. That sprawled out there.
Well, that was one casualty.
I know, I didn't like that. And you had and I felt very badly about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. I'm very much of an animal lover too, but that was the one thing I kept looking at. I said, "Oh, that's bad." But
see, it doesn't end in death. So many books about
one
pets.
That picture.
Yeah, I know.
That's
an actual picture. That's an actual one we found.
Yeah,
we were worried.
sad.
It was a true story in a way. It's embellished, but it's a true story.
Well, this is another great little book. I guess what you have to do now that you finished Smokey Bear, what's on your plate?
Well, I'm having a little thought about maybe taking these photographs and making a photograph book with of the bear, but nice big photographs, and having it for maybe very little children.
Oh, I see, a picture book in a sense.
Yes.
With maybe some things underneath it that you're going to come up with.
Yes.
It's probably smart to do. You put so much effort into it. Why not do that? Yeah,
well,
that's maybe a soft book or something that they can touch. But it's or maybe you need to make these bears. Real bears. And then they
maybe
can get
some characters.
Yeah, I meant no. I was thinking actually stuffed bears that look like that.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
You don't know this. As I was trying to find you one to give you as a gift when you arrived. I could not find a little black bear like this.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah, well, teddy bear.
Teddy bear. That's right, teddy bear. Oh, well, that's another whole story, isn't it, about teddy bears and why everybody loves teddy bears. Well, I know that you said you hadn't done much radio, but I think you've done a great job, and we're out of time.
All right.
And I want everyone to know that the website, actually, I have SmokeyBearAnovel.com.
Yes, that's
what
right.
I have, SmokeyBearAnovel.com. Mm-hmm. And you've been listening to Karen Signell, who is, of course, a She is the author of Smokey Bear, among other books, and I know we'll get her back again so that we can get into what she started talking about, wisdom of the heart. And we might even talk about the Florida ancient Egyptian geese. Who knows what? Thank you for joining us this morning, Karen.
Thank you for having me.